When you watch Star Trek and they use the transporter, have you ever stopped to think, are they actually traveling? Or is it just a fancy copy machine that destroys the original? Well, today, we're going to take that sci-fi idea and follow it all the way down a rabbit hole into the very real and very, very strange physics of what makes you, you.
Okay, let's dive right in with a little thought experiment from a researcher named Andrew Knight. Imagine you walk into a travel agency, and they offer you 3 different ways to get to a beautiful beach in Tahiti.
So, option 1 is the classic pricey flight. Option 2 is cheaper. They make a perfect atom-for-atom copy of you in Tahiti. And option 3 is the real bargain. They make a pretty good copy, but it's not exact. Which one do you pick? I mean, your choice really hinges on one massive question. What will you actually experience?
And that right there is what's called the duplication problem. If there are suddenly 2 of you, which one is the real you? Does your consciousness split? Do you experience both lives at once? It's one of these absolutely bizarre paradoxes that just kind of pops into existence the moment we assume consciousness can be copied like a computer file.
And just to show you how weird this gets, consider the Boltzmann brain idea. This hypothesis says that in a chaotic universe, it's actually more statistically likely for a fully formed brain, your brain, with all your memories of a life you never even lived, to just randomly pop into existence than it is for the entire universe to have formed in a way that led to you. It's a completely bonkers thought, right?
So here's the key takeaway. All of these philosophical headaches, the teleporters, the simulation theories, these Boltzmann brains, they all balance on this one single critical assumption. The consciousness, the thing that is you, can actually be copied. But what if it can't?
And this brings us to our first major potential answer. What if this entire problem, all these paradoxes, are built on a foundation that's just wrong? What if the laws of physics themselves say, nope, you can't do that?
Well, Andrew Knight argues exactly that. He basically says that trying to have 2 identical conscious minds at the same time leads to a logical mess, a contradiction that physics just doesn't allow. The problem is that if you have 2 identical starting points, there's no single predictable future for that original consciousness, and that breaks some really fundamental rules.
So let's walk through his argument. Let's say we have a person, we'll call her Alice, and we make a perfect copy. And we put them so far apart they can't possibly communicate. Because of tiny, random quantum events, things we can't predict, their experiences will start to diverge literally instantly.
So what does the original Alice experience now? Does she see the future of copy A, where maybe a particle spins up, or does she see the future of copy B, where it spins down? Since their futures are different, there's no single coherent answer for what Alice experiences. And Knight's point is that this isn't just a philosophical puzzle, he argues it's a physical impossibility.
The only way out of this logical knot, according to this view, is that the initial assumption had to be wrong all along. Your consciousness is fundamentally unique, it's tied to your physical body, and it simply cannot be copied. And if that's true, all those paradoxes we talked about, poof, they just evaporate.
But wait, that's just one fork in the road. What if we go the other way? What if the assumption is actually right? And not only are copies possible, but they're happening all the time, constantly.
This pulls us into a really wild idea that researcher Alexei Churchin has explored, multiverse immortality. The theory basically says that if every possible outcome of an event creates a new timeline, then for any situation, there will always be at least one timeline where you survive. So from your own subjective point of view, you can never actually die.
And what's interesting is there isn't just one way for this to be true. You've got a few different flavors. It could be something called eternal return, where the universe just repeats itself over and over infinitely. Or big world immortality in an infinite universe with infinite copies of you. Or the one you might have heard of, quantum immortality, from the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics.
But here's the catch. Whether any of this actually works for you really comes down to 2 gigantic unanswered questions. First, what is the universe really like? And second, what are you really like? Are you just a pattern of information? Or do you need an unbroken physical connection to your past to still be you? We just don't know.
All right, so just for a second, let's assume multiverse immortality is real. You get to live forever. That sounds amazing, right? Well, be careful what you wish for, because this kind of immortality comes with an absolutely terrifying hidden cost.
I mean, really think about this. If you can never subjectively die,
What happens when you get into a car crash that should be fatal? The theory doesn't promise you a good survival, it just promises you a survival, no matter how improbable or agonizing that survival turns out to be.
This leads to something that philosophers call S-risks, or suffering risks. You are basically guaranteed to experience the 1 in a billion timeline where you don't die. And that could mean surviving in a state of eternal aging or being trapped in a personal hell of pain and injury forever and ever.
The philosopher David Lewis put it in this absolutely chilling way. He said, this isn't immortality, it's the prospect of eternal quantum torment. Yeah, a truly horrifying thought.
Okay, so that's pretty bleak. But what if you aren't just a passenger on this crazy ride? What if you could actually grab the steering wheel and navigate these infinite timelines toward a better outcome? This is where the logic gets really interesting. If multiverse immortality is true, trying to end your life with euthanasia becomes a terrible gamble. Subjectively, you will only ever experience the timeline where it fails, which could make things so much worse. But what about just hitting pause? Cryothanasia, that's cryopreservation, offers a totally different path. You're trying to guide your consciousness toward the timelines where you're successfully revived in the future.
In fact, Turchin argues that if this multiverse immortality idea is correct, it subjectively boosts the chances of success for things like cryonics by 1,000 times, maybe more. Because no matter how low the objective odds are, from your point of view, it becomes one of the most likely paths to a future where you continue to exist in a healthy state.
So you really shouldn't think of multiverse immortality as plan A. It's more like a plan D. It's this weird underlying property of reality that might kick in after all your other plans. Life extension, cryonics, you name it, and it dramatically shifts the odds from your personal perspective.
So after this completely mind-bending trip through physics and philosophy, we're left standing at a huge fork in the road. We're looking at two profoundly different versions of what it even means to be a person.
So which is it? Are you a single, unique, uncopyable being living one finite life? Or are you an immortal traveler, constantly branching into infinite futures, facing both the risk of eternal torment and the possibility of navigating your way to a better world? Right now, science and philosophy don't have the answer, which leaves us to ponder maybe the biggest question there is.